Alright, everybody. RMJ Movie Reviews. Back again, y'all. Let me get out the costume there. I just got a little bit too excited there. Well, now, the month is almost coming to an end. So I'm kind of hitting with the heavy hitters. And now I come with my review of the 1993 underrated classic, Posse, starring Mario Van Peebles, Alec Baldwin's little brother, Stephen Baldwin, Tone Loc, Tiny Zeus Lister from No Holds Barred fame, Blair Underwood, Sally Richardson, Richard Jordan, Billy Zane, and a whole bunch of other people who show up in this movie because Mario Van Peebles directed it. Y'all, Posse is a film that I actually did see theatrically in theaters. Matter of fact, that film actually came out, I was in 5th grade, I was 11 years old, and I believe this was Mario Van Peebles' second film after New Jack City. And I distinctly remember, if my best friend ever happens to see this review, I distinctly remember that his older sister, who I believe we were 11 at that time, she must have been maybe I think about 21 or 22, and she kept talking about how she wants to go see the movie with the black cowboys, and I never liked westerns when I was a kid. It wasn't until I got a little bit older, maybe 14, 15, 16, I started to appreciate a lot of the classic westerns, the Sergio Leone and Clint Eastwood and all the other ones. But I had never ever in my lifetime seen a black western really until that film. And I remember she dragged us to go see this movie. Me, him, and his nephew at the time. His nephew I think is like 25 now, but at the time he was, goodness, how old was he? He was 3 then, I think. And I remember the movie started and I was just kind of like, oh my God, what is this? And as the movie got rolling, I loved it. And by the time the movie was over, and let me tell you, it wasn't a super duper packed audience, but there was enough people in there that, like, you know, people reacted to the jokes and the kills and the sad moments and all that good stuff. But I really loved the film, and in my personal opinion, I think this was Mario Van Peebles' second best film. Not saying it's his second good film, but in my opinion, as a viewer, I very much enjoyed this film. I say it go New Jack City, this film. And Panther, I haven't seen in years. I saw Panther once when it first came on video, which I remember I rented it, I think, from this place called Flicks, and there was like one copy in the video store. So go figure. You can't even find Panther now. I don't even think it's on DVD. Either way, I'm digressing. But I loved Posse, and I always have. And I remember when it came on video the next year in 1994, and I went to middle school. I was in the 6th grade. We all used to talk about it all the time. And I still, to this day, really like this movie. It's been a really... Matter of fact, this DVD, I actually found in the bargain bin at Walmart. And I don't think this film was like a big financial hit when it came out. I think it kind of just... You know, I didn't pay attention to box office back then, but I think it kind of faded away, you know, which is unfortunate because this is a really fun movie, and I think it kind of does what a lot of films try to do, is they try to really entertain you, but give you a little something else to go home with, you know what I mean? Wow, they entertain you, you know, and I think Posse does that very well. You got a slew, I mean, I named off all the actors. You just got a slew of... And one thing that Mario Van Peebles was doing at that time, because this was his second film, and he had did New Jack City about 2 years before, was that he would often cast musical artists, R&B singers, rappers, or sometimes he'd give them little bit cameo parts, and they'd kind of sprinkle the film with kind of musical interludes and songs. We saw that with the Leverts in New Jack City, you know, New Jack City, you know, and they're singing over the fire and the crackheads are walking around and stuff. He kind of does this here in New Jack. He does this here in Posse, but it kind of is in the scene where the Posse goes to New Orleans. But basically, the movie tells the story of Jesse Lee. He's a black soldier in the Spanish-American War. Basically, they're in the process of fighting the Spanish over in Cuba. And these guys are outnumbered by a Gatling gun, which is basically a minigun, like Arnold Schwarzenegger had in Terminator 2. And they basically don't have the resources to fight it. Billy Zane is the evil racist colonel. And basically, Billy Zane does not care if he loses all his men. He wants them to stay and basically die a bloody death. He sets them up so that they go and rob the Spanish for gold, so presumably he can get the gold and walk away with it and be rich, because there's already little things in the dialogue that hint that he's kind of corrupt anyway. And he obviously has disdain for his black soldiers, for his men. And basically, they one up the colonel, and then the posse goes on the run from his evil colonel, and they kind of travel back to America and go across the West and, go for something. And then they find a black town that is basically being muscled by the KKK in a nearby white town. And the posse bands together to help the fine old colored folk of Freedomville fight the evil Cutterstown. That's pretty much the story of Posse. And, matter of fact, I hadn't watched this movie in a very long time. And it was nice to kind of sit and watch it again and be refreshed of like all the performances. And another thing too is, this movie came out in 1993, so you got Big Daddy. I forgot to mention Big Daddy Kane is in the film, who, for those of you who don't know, who might be younger viewers, he was a rapper back in the 80s and kind of throughout the early 90s. Tone Loc is in the film too. There's a whole lot of slew of black talent in this film. Isaac Hayes shows up in the film too. Pam Grier. My man from Wiz, who was the Tin Man, I think it's Nipsey Russell. He's in it too. Marvin Van Peebles' brother, Sweetback's Black Revenge. Melvin Van Peebles is in the film. And then there's like some other actors who I think were like in classic black films from the 70s and stuff. They show up too. Family Matters, Reginald VelJohnson, Die Hard 1 and 2. He shows up in the picture too. And another funny thing is too, there's a lot of jokes in the film too that are representative of things that were happening at the time. There's kind of an in joke in the picture where Melvin Van Peebles goes, "No justice, no peace," which is what they were saying around the time of the LA riots. And also there's a nod to Rodney King too with "Can't We All Get Along?" So, if you're like 11 years old or 20 or something like that, you won't get those references. But Mario Van Peebles always likes to splash his movies with multiple talents. And he kind of makes Posse a kind of Western, dare I use the word, hip actioner. So he really sprinkles the film with a lot of R&B music. The rapping in that, of course, all of us who are old enough remembers the theme song of the movie is, "It's the posse, shoot 'em up, it's the posse." That's the whole theme song. There's no rap. There's really just at that end of the film, there's rap. And I'm sorry, too, there's actually a gentleman who kind of opens up the movie and bookends the movie. Excuse me if I can't remember his name, but he was an actor who did a lot of black westerns back in the day. And I'm sorry if I forget his name. Excuse me, I should know better since I'm such a film geek. But the funny thing is, at the end of the picture, the directors of House Party and Boomerang and The Great White Hype, if anybody remembers that movie, Reginald Hudlin and his brother, they were two guys who were running with the vacuum cleaners in House Party in the first one. They show up, they do some cameos. So it's kind of, I miss this era of black filmmaking where it was like you would see a lot of stuff like this and you would see the energy, and I kind of feel like that kind of... and one thing I also say about Posse too is it has that really independent spirit that you saw in early Spike Lee, that you saw in Mario Van Peebles, that you saw in Reginald Hudlin, and all those guys from back then, and I kind of feel like that spirit is kind of missing now. The energy is not there. I'd like to be the one to bring it back to that. John Singleton is, he's been making films for a long time now, so I think kind of the level of energy that he once had back then is not what it used to be, but I'd like to be kind of the new guy in town to kind of bring back kind of the energy that you see here in Posse. And that's what I really always liked about Van Peebles films, is I felt Van Peebles really had a sense of like that kind of action kind of energy, in which I felt John Singleton kind of got the action stuff a little bit okay, but he was more kind of drama. Spike Lee was more dramas, but you know, excuse me, Mario Van Peebles really was doing the action stuff really well because he's got a lot of good action scenes in New Jack City, and that energy of the music in New Jack and the energy that he maintained here in Posse. You know, fabulous stuff. Another thing I want to talk about is actually the cinematography. The cinematography in Posse is just spectacular. I love Michael Bay does this a lot too. Or let me not talk about Michael Bay, but there's really this thing where like they want to get the look of kind of like a watery, kind of glowing kind of look that reflects off of walls and people's faces. They use that a lot here, and I really love that. I really love the set designs. I love the costumes. I love the women. I mean, you got Sally Richardson and oh goodness, I think Pam Grier must have been maybe, I don't know if Pam Grier was in her early 40s when she did this movie. She might, I don't know. I think she might have been in her early 40s. Ooh. Pam Grier in this movie is just like, I could just jump through the screen and become a 12-year-old boy again. And Blair Underwood too, who shows up, who does a really fine job in the picture. I jumped around a little bit, but the cinematography and the costumes and the music just A1. And I don't mind, you know, I kind of read, I saw a Siskel and Ebert's review of the film, and I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, and this movie is unfairly has a 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's why I tell you right now, I hate Rotten Tomatoes. I always have. Rotten Tomatoes sucks, man. Digressing a minute, I looked on there one time and I saw all the Die Hard films rated right. This was before the horrible fifth movie. Live Free or Die Hard is rated higher than Die Hard with a Vengeance. Are you kidding me? And it's even rated higher than Die Hard 2. And I know people got mixed feelings about that. But Live Free or Die Hard is rated as high as the original Die Hard. That's why I hate Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes sucks, man. I hate them so much. I hate Rotten Tomatoes. But this film has a 31%. That's just unfair. But going back to Siskel and Ebert's review, the late Siskel was talking about how, like, something about the scene in the card table where they're in New Orleans. I can't remember exactly what his criticism was, but it was something about, like, people didn't talk like that in the West. And Ebert mentioned in his review that he kind of felt that the movie was... The gist of his review was that he felt the story kind of got lost and that the film was style over substance. And rewatching it now, and you know, I would agree that I think that the film really does mean well, but I would agree that it kind of is style over substance. Like I mentioned, the cinematography, the costumes, the orchestral score to the music is really good. The casting, you know what I mean? It had to have been a hell of a hard time to get all these different forms of black talent together, artists, rappers, musicians, theater actors. I mean, it had to have been tough. So I will agree that I think probably the story got a little lost here, because I will say that is the big negative of the movie, is that, you know, ultimately the movie ends with kind of this, you know, a lot of stuff in the 90s was doing that, because all that Rodney King and LA riots, the cops beating them on film. I mean, that racial stuff was going on. So there was a lot of these kind of stuff coming out back then. And it kind of ends with this little text about how, like, it was the grandfather clause, and so blacks really couldn't own their own property. They couldn't be educated because, like, if their grandfather was a slave, that means that they couldn't own property, and this and that. And ultimately, the final battle of the movie is Jesse and the Posse helping them fight off Cutterstown, which is run by the KKK, who are trying to basically take over Freedomville and own the land. My issue is that this movie is an hour and 50 minutes. It's almost 2 hours. It takes the whole first hour of the movie for them to get to Freedomville. Now, I think had they set up that ending text of the movie a little bit earlier, you know, if that would have been the through line of the movie, of us being educated and us, like, owning property, I think it kind of would have made the final fight, and when Cutterstown versus Freedomville, it would have made it mean a little bit more to me. So I do agree with that criticism that the movie kind of is more style over actual substance. And also, too, you don't really, you're seeing really more caricatures, you know what I mean, versus, I don't really feel like I'm watching actual characters. There's really, honestly, only Probably, this is the way I feel from watching it. I really only kind of feel like there's 3 of the actors, at least as part of the main cast, who I really feel like they're the character. And that would be Richard Jordan, who plays the corrupt sheriff of Cutterstown, which he was a fantastic, he's died, but he's a fantastic villain. Extremely despicable here, and he plays that role well. He was a great actor. He's very chilling. Blair Underwood, who has always just been a spectacular actor. I just always have loved Blair Underwood. He plays villains very good. And I'm trying to think who the third actor was that I felt that way about. I actually can't even really name right off rip who I thought that third actor was. But those 2, I feel like they're playing real characters. Billy Zane, who was, just a hoot in Demon Knight, and I love Billy Zane. He's fallen off the map. I wish he would do more stuff, but Billy Zane has always been a charismatic, fun actor. He did a great job in Dead Calm with Nicole Kidman. He's just having the time of his life here. Billy Zane is kind of really winking at the camera. He I think in the early part of the movie, he kind of plays the villain kind of a little bit despicable, but towards the end, he kind of gets in the Jack Nicholson 1989 Batman territory a little bit, which is fine. You know what I mean? This isn't meant to be reality. It's just kind of a R&B kind of hip twist on a black western is really what the film is. But I kind of and Mario Van Peebles, he's playing kind of the Clint Eastwood, the silent type, man with no name. And Mario Van Peebles, when he's acting, sometimes can be hit or miss. You know what I mean? But I think he does the job well, and he does it with the role, and I think he plays it well. I mean, to be directing all this stuff with music and bombs, and I mean, it's hard to do. So I think he does his role very well. Stephen Baldwin, who has the most excruciating death scene in the whole movie. I will never forget when I first saw this film. Stephen Baldwin, I can honestly say, I think this is Stephen Baldwin's best performance of any movie he ever made to date. Because he is very charismatic. He's a very fun character in this movie. And him and Big Daddy Kane really got a good chemistry. I wish they could have had more scenes together, and maybe with them actually killing people and stuff. But when Stephen Baldwin dies, and what I love is how he's killed by the head of Cutterstown, Richard Jordan, which just shows that this guy is just a straight psychopath. He'll kill black people or white people. He just does not care. He's nuts. And they beat him to death, man. And I'll never forget, man, I was crushed when I first saw this film, because Stephen Baldwin is the token, they had token black guy. He's the token white guy in the group. You know what I mean? So you really get attached to him because you're in there with him, because you see that he doesn't care. He's just a dude that just likes to get out there and have fun. He'll fight. This is his brother. And then when they kill him, it's just kind of damn. I mean, and it's a rough way to go. I mean, he gets beat to death with axe handles. I mean, if anybody has ever dropped one of them axe handles maybe on their foot or bumped their elbow with them things, it hurts. So just imagine being beat with those things. Really, really tough scene in that movie. But and kind of my other issue with the film is I feel that this is a Western. So the camera should be wide. It should wide, pull back. Let's see the landscape. There's a lot of tight and medium shots in this movie, and it's so tight. There's sometimes when I feel that the movie, it should be more epic than it feels. They need to pull the camera back, open it up. Maybe that might have been budgetary reasons. I don't know, because I know as a filmmaker sometimes, listen to commentaries, they do stuff like that to hide things. So maybe it was a budgetary thing. But I really think that you can pull back. Let's see more what's going on here. You know what I mean? This is the wild, wild west. Let me feel the landscape. Take me back to that time, So I think the story and the tight close-ups I had an issue with. And kind of the characterization. You know what I mean? But regardless of its flaws, and it's a very flawed movie, I still kind of feel, and I'm sorry, another issue about the characterizations, I kind of feel like the performances weren't consistent. I kind of felt like every actor was making their own movie. You know what I mean? Because kind of Richard Jordan is and I love the fact though in this movie that you got 3 villains. You know, you got Richard Jordan, you got Billy Zane, and then you got Blair Underwood. You got a black villain, two white villains, which that was a cool dynamic. You know, Blair Underwood is kind of is playing it real. Richard Jordan is playing it real. Billy Zane is kind of going for the Joker thing. And then you got Tone Loc, and then you got some of the cameos that I feel are kind of distracting from the man. Everybody is just kind of doing their own little movie. You know what I mean? And it's just, but you know, I can only imagine this was a hard movie to make. You got the horses and the costumes and the guns, like I said, and then probably, you know, you got somebody like Tone Loc, who he's not really an actor, and you know, and then it was probably just very hard. So I give Van Peebles his credit, and I was kind of sad to see that the movie only grossed $18 million at the box office, even for 1993. That's not very good. You know, I imagine the budget for this movie was probably like $20 million, maybe $15 million or something like that. So I really wish the film would have did a lot better, but you know, but and also too, it wasn't promoted that much at the time. I remember I saw little commercials here and there, but it wasn't like, you know, I just opened up the paper and it was like some giant ad with the cover of this DVD. Which this is the original artwork from the one that was at the theater. Except the only difference is there was gold bullets on the bottom. Really cool moment in the movie where Mario Van Peebles kills the final bad guy, because there's a whole thing in the movie where they say you use gold, and if you kill demons with gold, they'll actually die. And I thought that was a nice little thing. I wish they could have built that up a little bit more in the movie, because it's there, but it's not built up as much. But you know, Posse is a very underrated fine gem from, you know, kind of the really to me, the golden era of black filmmaking, which was from the 80s and through the early 90s, maybe to mid 90s. You know, I mean, you know, films like this, you know, is what made me inspired me to be a filmmaker. So, you know, I really like the film. It's very flawed. It has its issues. There's some issues with some of the performances. But overall, I think this is a very ambitious effort, and I think Posse is very underrated. I kind of wish it would get a lot more credit, you know, than what it actually does. And especially that BS 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. But Rotten Tomatoes can just go straight to HE double hockey sticks. I hate Rotten Tomatoes. It's just a garbage site to me. Thumbs up the video. Subscribe to the channel. Share the video. And leave some comments down below about Posse, the performances, some of the points I brought up. Just anything you like about it. You know what I mean? I'm just going to skip right and tell you my next two movie reviews are actually going to be the 1992, another underrated classic, Boomerang, starring the once great Eddie Murphy. And then, after Boomerang, I'm coming with my movie review of the 1995, another underrated classic, Dead Presidents, directed by the Hughes brothers. RMJ Movie Reviews. I will see you soon.